will be moving forward on a ban on assault weapons because we know that weapons designed to kill the largest number of people in the shortest amount of time have no place in our communities.
So gun control is moving to the top of the agenda when Parliament resumes tomorrow. The government has promised to ban assault rifles, crack down on gun violence, something that's been on the rise in some of Canada's biggest cities. But would a gun ban in cities like Toronto and Winnipeg really help curb violence? Is it really getting to the nub of the problem? And in a minority parliament, can the Liberals get enough support from opposition benches to make it happen? Let's bring MPs to find out. Joël Lightbound is the Public Safety Parliamentary Secretary. Michelle Rempel Garner is a Conservative MP for Alberta. And Peter Julian is the NDP House Leader and an MP in British Columbia. Thanks for joining us all. Mr. Lightbound, I got to start with you. The Prime Minister said there's going to be a priority in the next couple of weeks, he said. There's going to be introducing legislation to ban assault rifles. What's an assault rifle? What exactly are you going to ban?
Well, the Minister Blair has been clear, and it was a campaign commitment that we want to ban military-style assault rifles so that have large capacity magazines. So essentially weapons that were designed for military uses.
But give me an example of that, because a lot of sporting rifles, like it doesn't mean, is that semi-automatic?
Well, one that's been cited a lot, but I'm not going to go into details on the list. We're working with the RCMP on that, but the AR-15 is a good example of one assault rifle that was designed for its efficiency to kill people, and I think we campaigned on it. We've heard loud and clear from Canadians.
I'm just trying to get, just before I get the response, you know, automatic weapons are already prohibited, right? Then there's restricted weapon categories. Right. What other weapons exactly will be prohibited?
So these semi-automatic that are designed for their efficiency in military situations. So the AR-15 is one example, but as I said, we're working on the RCMP on the list, but those are weapons that were designed for use in the military that have no place in Canadian society. That's something we've heard loud and clear from Canadians.
What do you make of that? I mean, Bill Blair has said he doesn't want to demonize legal gun owners and he doesn't want to demonize sport shooters. Can they cut the line there?
Well, first of all, we have to stop firearms violence in Canada. It's very important. The issue with this approach is that it doesn't address the problem, which is the vast majority, I believe it's well over 90% of firearms that are used in violent crime are either illegally obtained or they're primarily smuggled in from the United States. So the government is proposing confiscating just so many different firearms from people that are frankly already banned in Canada. It's not the same laws as the U.S. I think that in order to receive my restricted license, to be honest with you, I think the vetting was actually more strict than getting my cabinet clearance.
Peter Julian, this has been something that's divided the NDP. A lot of your rural MPs, they don't want any kind of restrictions on guns. What will the NDP do? Will they support Liberals on gun control?
Well, we have to see the legislation, of course, Evan. I mean, what the NDP does is we look through the legislation as it's presented. We have those discussions, and then we move forward from there. But I do think there is no doubt, if you ask Canadians across the country, particularly in places like Toronto, they are increasingly concerned about gun violence. And the reality is, what we have seen both under Conservative governments but also under Liberal governments is a failure to make the kinds of investments so that the existing laws can be enforced. And we do have illegal weapons coming across from the United States. We have an illegal market here in Canada where legal guns are purchased and then sold on the illegal market. Police do not have the resources that they really need in order to enforce those laws. And I think all Canadians would share the goal of making sure that our communities are safe and that we start to reduce the levels of gun violence that have reached disturbing levels in this country.
Okay, but I want to, let me just get Mr. Light, can you just respond? Well, Michelle Rempel has raised this point, that it's a solution for the wrong problem. The problem is illegal guns coming in, not legal gun owners. How will this proposed legislation or gun control bans address that concern?
I think we have to look at this from a holistic perspective. When Madame Rempel says that we're demonizing law-abiding gun owners, that is so completely far from the truth. I don't think you need a military-style assault rifle to go hunting. That's what we're targeting: military-style assault rifles.
Tell me what
and on the other hand, for law enforcement, so we've given 86 million to CBSA to better better protect our borders and prevent gun smuggling across the border. Meanwhile, the Conservatives cut 900 million in the RCMP and CBSA. We've invested 250 million in
I just want
provinces.
an answer.
So I think we need a multifaceted approach.
I get that, but just before, can I get an answer to that question? If gun violence in cities is caused by illegal guns, as many contend, although there's a debate on that, how will this ban stop the influx of illegal things, like illegal handguns, to stop the gun crimes?
Well, it's part of the solution to ban military-style assault rifle. It's not the only answer to that problem. That's why we're investing in CBSA for the smuggling. That's why we want to put in stricter penalties for illegal smuggling. That's why we're moving forward, investing, giving provinces and to law enforcement $215 million so that they can fight gang violence across Canada and cities across Canada.
You're about to spend $1 billion+ on confiscation. Why don't you just put that in the RCMP? Look, as a law-abiding firearms owner myself, if I was the problem and my community was the problem, we would be the first ones to say more regulation, because we're not the United States. But can you imagine how ridiculous it sounds for you not to be able to answer Evan's question and then say that you're going to spend billions of dollars on confiscation when there's already a ban?
Michelle Rempel, how do the Conservatives answer the question that a lot of domestic abuse, suicides caused by people who are legal gun owners, and then in fact that it's not all illegal firearms that are causing death? Cities have rising rates of handgun use. Sure. What is wrong with some kind of gun control in a lot of places in urban centers where people seem to want it? What's the Conservative response to that?
We already have very strict gun control, and very strict, some of the most strict in the world. I mean, you can't just go and buy a handgun in Canada. The process for licensing is usually about a year. You are subject to daily vetting. You have to store your firearms in very strict conditions.
So you just want status quo?
Well, here's the thing. Like you talked about suicide, same thing. Very, very huge problem. But when you talk about suicide with firearm, we have, tip lines. We have all sorts of checks on the licensing process around mental health. There are so many things that we already have in place that the issue is firearms that are obtained illegally. That's the problem. So any of the major incidents that have happened, when you look at it, these aren't licensed firearms owners and their guns were illegally sourced. So why would we spend $1 billion on this?
Mr. Julian.
Well, we take no lessons from the Conservatives. They gutted crime prevention programs when they were in power. And the Liberals like to talk about the investments they're making, but the reality is, when you look at the Liberal investments across the country, in a place like Surrey, BC, it basically means one additional police officer can be hired. And when we look at the extent of the growing levels of gun crime, we have to make sure that the investments are made, that we are removing dangerous weapons from the streets, there's no doubt about that, and that we have a thoughtful approach.
All right, I got to leave it there. Before we go, though, real quick, a lot of people, since Pierre Poilievre, Ron Ambrose, and Jean Charest are not running, people are saying Michelle Rempel Garner is going to run. Are you considering a leadership race?
I am concerned about the fact that Western alienation is not being addressed in Parliament by the Government of Canada. And the base of my party is in Western Canada. They voted for us to give them a voice. I will be making sure, one way or the other, that is addressed in my tenure in this Parliament. So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Okay, no decision. I got to leave it there. Thank you, Joël, Lightbound, Michelle Rempel Garner, and Peter Julian.